How you dress is also a spiritual discipline. Let me right at the outset give you 3 reasons why. Number 1, because how you dress can tell the outsider, not with certainty, but can still tell the outsider what your values are. And that's why the Bible doesn't ignore the subject. It then means that if you are a Christian, it will be important that you are aware about that the way you dress is telling stories. And when I say how you dress, it's also how you also undress. What you show and leave uncovered would also be an issue that you need to be aware of. So if you have been a non-Christian and you are dressing in a certain way, then it will be important to understand that when you become a Christian, you have to think about your dressing, because you don't want what your motive for dressing previously to be the ones directing how you now dress as somebody who is called a Christian, who lives his life for Christ. And that will be an important issue that you need to deal with, because it does matter to you, to your God, and to the outsider who is looking at you, and that will be important. Let's just see right at the beginning how Isaiah describes the women of Jerusalem. Isaiah chapter 3 verse 16. The Lord says, "The women of Zion are haughty, walking along with outstretched necks, flirting with their eyes, strutting along with swaying hips, with ornaments jingling on their ankles. Therefore the Lord will bring sores on the heads of the women of Zion. The Lord will make their scalps bowed." In other words, how they are walking, how they are behaving does not honor God, and God therefore is saying he will bring a punishment on them. So far from that passage, you haven't seen an open sin they have done. It's just the way they walk, the way they carry themselves, the way they sway their hips, and the conclusion is he will bring sores on their heads, and the Lord will make their scalps bowed. Of course, for a woman to be bowed is quite a challenge. And in the process, he may be saying much more than this, because it's the prophecy of Isaiah against Israel. But there is also the background information that basically the way they walked was telling a different story. Look at verse 18. In that day, the Lord will snatch away their finery, the bangles and headbands and crescent necklaces, the earrings and bracelets and veils, the headdresses and anchors and sachets, the perfume bottles and charms, the signet rings and nose rings, the fine robes and the capes and cloaks, the purses and mirrors, and the linen garment and tiaras and shoes. Wow, many items on these women. And he's saying, since they're unhappy with the way they carry themselves, a day is coming when you take away all this beautification. Instead of fragrance, once God has punished them, there'll be a stench. Instead of a sash, you have a rope, maybe to hang them. Instead of well-dressed hair, I'm replacing it with boldness. God is promising, instead of fine clothing, they will wear sackcloth. Instead of beauty, branding. And so it needs to be understood that the way we dress could have consequences. So we cannot say like the Kenyan ladies who said, my dress, my choice, when people commented about the way they were dressed. They say, my dress, my choice, I can wear the way I want. If you're in trouble, it's your own problem. So you find a woman whose dress is too low from above and too high from below, walking in the middle of the street and everybody's watching. Men have stopped moving, they're just watching her. And then you tell her, Julie, don't you want to cover up a little more? She says, no, my dress, my choice. You know, the thing I want to say is the moment you become a Christian, you lose the power of choice. I know young people don't like me saying it, but that's basically the truth. You have to come to where every choice, so-called choice you are making, is actually not yours. You seek God. What is your choice for me? You ask him. And on the basis of what he tells you, you do it. Because you can't go to him for a choice and then refuse his choice. That's why Christians say we have Jesus Christ as our master. And a master determines everything about you. That's why you are a disciple, follower, not initiator, but follower of the Lord Jesus Christ. So every aspect of your life then needs to be lived in a way obedient to God. You don't make a choice. So you can't say, my dress, my choice. No. You need to ask yourself, what would Jesus want me to? How would Jesus want me to dress? Even when you are in the shop buying, would this dress be honoring to God? If the answer is no, it may be the latest fashion. It may have been decided in Paris that that's what they are wearing for summer. But the truth is, you won't hear it because you have a conviction it will not be honoring to God. And that is so really what we are saying is, once you become a Christian, then you need to understand that it's not my dress, my choice. It is, I find out what does Christ want for my life. Then I actually follow it. My dress, my choice, no. Christ, my choice. If I choose Christ as master, then I give him the authority, the right to make all other choices for me. Who I marry is not the girl I admire. It's the girl whom God decrees is the right one for me. What I wear is not how I feel comfortable in, but is what the Lord has chosen for me. So we no longer choose. Instead of we find what Christ has chosen for us. That's what it means to really be truly a Christian, to leave all choices to God. And so whatever you do it with all your heart because you know you are doing it for God. Isn't that the message of Colossians chapter 3, verse 23? Whatever includes how you dress. And that will be something that will be important for you to deal with. So, the Lord is saying, the women of Zion are going to suffer because of their pride, the way they wear to show off. He says that he is going to punish them. And that will be important. And then he is telling them, you will see the difference. Not even the question of when you die, even in this life, he will bring punishment for you for the way you dress and the way you carry yourself. So that's why I'm saying it's a spiritual discipline. If spiritual discipline means doing something which I told you discipline means doing something that is important to do, not because you enjoy it, not because you like it, but because it's the right thing to do. That's what it means when you talk about Christian disciplines or spiritual disciplines. We are talking about doing things that are honoring to God, whether we like it or not. Then you say, that guy is disciplined. He'll be doing things that are honoring to God, and that will be very, very important. But let's look at a number of verses that address this subject. First Timothy chapter 2 verse 9 says, "Also, I want the women to dress modestly, with decency and propriety, adorning themselves not with elaborate hairstyles or gold or pearls or expensive clothes." Here, I don't think Paul is saying that you are a sinner if you are wearing a certain hairstyle or you are wearing jewelry or you are wearing expensive clothes. I think what I hear him saying is, number one, are you modest? Or are you carrying your wealth on your clothing? Because the command here is, how you dress must be modest. It will mean that you are not out of line with the people where you are. And that's why one of the rules is, as you dress, maybe you are going to be the one giving a testimony, maybe you are the one going to preach, don't wear in such a way that people will not hear you, because your dressing is speaking so loud they can't hear what you are saying about your master. So they are asking is, if you are really dressing, answer the question, can you be regarded as modest? And I know that's a difficult thing, because what's modest in London may not be modest in Johannesburg. The two are not in agreement. It depends on the people around you, what they call modest. I think that will be something important. But the second thing that I hear Paul saying is decency. Decent has to do with morality. It means you can wear some clothes and they are not decent. Normally because they overexpose. They are not covering what in your culture you have agreed must be covered. So we say, that dressing is not decent. So it's not only, first of all, you are checking, is it modest? Or is it shouting your riches and who you are more than, so people can't hear you? Number two, are you decent? Can you be said to be somebody morally right just by the way you are dressing yourself? Are you decent? Then the third word is propriety. You know, when you talk about you are dressing modestly with decency and propriety. And I think when you talk about propriety, you are referring to how in certain circumstances, how right is it? There's nothing wrong with being in a pair of jeans when you are climbing the mountain. But is it the same thing when you are preaching at the pulpit? What is it? In other words, a dress can be right in a certain circumstance, but not right in another circumstance. And those are things that you have to think about. So, and that's what it means then. Don't just wear something because it's expensive. Don't wear because it's elaborate. And when you say wear, I think it can be in your hair, it can be in your clothing, it can be in your jewelry, it can be in your shoes, whichever way. That's what we are learning. And so the critical words here is, whatever you wear must be something those looking at you can say it's modest, can say it is decent, can say it passes the rule of propriety. Then in Genesis 3:10, I think you also need to answer the question, why do we dress? Genesis 3:10 says, he answered, I heard you, this Adam answering, I had you in the garden and was afraid because I was naked. So I hid. All the other times they had fellowship with God, and the issue of nakedness never arose. But after he ate the tree he had been told not to eat, of knowing good and evil, he now could see himself and he knew he was naked. So from then onwards, you are supposed, if you truly are a person who is a Christian, you should be ashamed when you expose your private parts. Because I think that's what, from the pictures we see, that's the interpretation given. What he was covering was a naked part, was a private part. And I think that really what we are learning. You dress, one of the reasons we dress is to cover nakedness. And you need to be aware about it. So as you wear your dress, ask, can my nakedness be seen? And of course, whether we are men or women, we have private parts. We have things that can lead to immorality, generally in most cultures. For example, if you expose your backside or your front side around the midsection, people will feel you are not decent. You are not decently dressed. You are naked. And for men or women, the chest is another area regarded as a sign of nakedness. Nobody seems to worry if you don't cover your legs. You are short and don't cover your legs. Nobody seems to worry if you don't cover your arms. Nobody seems to worry. Not many people seem to worry when you don't cover your head or your face. But there are certain places that you are supposed to cover. So let's be clear. Any Christian, if you have become a Christian, you want to ensure you cannot be seen in public with those parts exposed. Of course, what you do in your bedroom between you and your spouse is a totally different thing, because both of you are supposed to feel not ashamed. So you cannot be ashamed because your husband has seen you naked, or because your wife has seen you naked. There will be something wrong with your marriage. So there are certain areas where you can be naked and it will be okay, but not in public, not before your children, not before your parents, not before outsiders. And I think that's what you're talking about when you're talking about the not being naked. So that's one of the reasons why we dress. So we dress to show modesty. We dress to cover nakedness, but we also dress to deal with warmth, to get warmth, to deal with the cold. Isn't that what Paul is talking about in 2 Timothy 4:13? When you come, he says, bring the cloak that I left with the Carpus at Troas, and my scrolls, especially the parchments. Now he had left some things, and now it was getting to winter, and he was going to have time. And he is saying, no, two things will help me to enjoy my winter. I need reading material, scrolls and parchments, and I also need the cloak so that I don't feel cold. So you can say clearly then, if you are going to wear clothes, part of the reason you wear is because of warmth. A friend of mine said, and I've never disagreed with him, that that cold is something easy to handle, because when you feel cold, you wear a shirt. You feel more cold, you wear a coat. You feel more cold, you put on a heavy coat. You feel more cold, you put a blanket over you. So you can deal with the cold simply by what you are doing, and of course you can put on a heater. Unfortunately, it's not as easy the other way around. When it gets hot, you remove your outer coat, you get hotter, you remove your other coat, you get hotter, you remove your shirt. If it keeps going hot, then you break the rule of nakedness, because you are likely to feel you are justified in the amount of heat to start showing nakedness, and that will not be right. So whatever the weather, you need to wear clothes appropriate to dealing with the heat or warmth or lack of it. But that does not excuse you to walk naked because it's summer or because it is. There is a way you can still cover up, but with something that will not hold the heat. And I think that's something that you have to deal with. So Esther 4:4 is still dealing with this idea of clothing. When Esther's eunuchs and female attendants came and told her about Mordecai, she was in great distress. She sent clothes for him to put on instead of his sackcloth, but he would not accept them. The clothes were actually sending a message. Sackcloth in the Jewish culture meant you are humbling yourself before God, that you want God to notice that you are sorry, you are repentant. And again, we are learning that clothing can send up that message as a way you would wear that shows a humility, that shows that you are not in the happiest of moods and that you are seeking God's intervention. Mordecai wanted them all and suddenly to know that there is trouble for the Jews and that he is seeking the mind of God for things to improve. And maybe he already knew that his relative, the queen, is likely to discover and knows the message it would be giving. And that's really what happened. So let me ask you a question. What message is your dressing giving? Then in Mark 5:15, and then NIV says, when they came to Jesus, they saw that the man who had been possessed by the legions of demons sitting there dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. So your dress can show your mind, the state of your mind. There's a way you dress and people suspect you are depressed, or suspect you have a mental breakdown, or suspect you are not yourself. They may not, even if they meant to tell you to give a testimony, now they don't tell you because they can see from the way you have come, you don't look ready for a public meeting, and they fear you may have a problem with the state of your mind. So you need to be careful that people don't communicate that you have a problem which you don't have. So this demon-possessed person, by the way he was dressed, everyone knew they was demon-possessed. When the demons were removed, he changed his dressing. So now they could see that he is okay in his mind. Let me ask you, as a Christian, does your dressing show that you have a new state of mind? That you are a new person, just simply by the selection of what to wear? In 1 Peter 3, from verse 1, we read, wives, in the same way submit yourself to your own husband, so that in any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of your wives, when they see the purity and reverence of your lives. Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and wearing gold jewelry, or rather, it should be from your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. For this is the way the holy women of the past who put their hope in God used to adorn themselves. They submitted themselves to their own husbands. So we need to allow your inner beauty not to be camouflaged by your outer dressing. And that's what Peter is saying, that the inner beauty should be what and how people see inner beauty. They also see it by the way you talk, by the way you carry yourself, by the way you behave. That's really what will what will help. Clothes to show your inner beauty. And I think that's a very, very important thing. And this inner beauty is real. That's why sometimes you ask yourself, how did that woman agree to marry such an ugly man? The ugly man may be having such inner beauty. Their marriage is fantastic. Because inner beauty is what really controls how you relate with other people, not the outer beauty. But it's important in dressing not to hide the inner beauty that you have. Then in Matthew 6, verse 28, we read, "And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon, in all his splendor, was dressed like one of these." Are you getting it? God provides clothing himself. In fact, he is saying that the way he dresses the flowers is the way the plants, is the way with the flowers, is the way he also dress you. So God is promising to provide you with what you require in order to be properly dressed. So don't worry about lack of clothes. Pray to God, and God will give you the clothes that you actually need. Then Matthew 7:15 says, "Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves." In other words, don't make decisions simply. Whereas we have been emphasizing the importance of clothing, but on the other way around, if you are looking at people, it is possible for somebody to wear clothing to give inner beauty, which he doesn't have. Don't make your decisions on the basis of the cover of the book. Read inside to see what is inside the cover of the book. Clothing that deceive the sheep is a bad way. And so don't just make a decision on the basis of how people are dressed, that they are good or bad. Whereas you yourself should always dress in such a way you cannot be mistaken for being bad. But other people, be careful how you assess them. Luke 16:19 says, "There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day." This is the story of the rich man and Lazarus. Here, clothing is not indicator of where you'll be in eternity. This man that is described as wearing or dressed in purple. Purple is the royal color, and fine linen, and living in luxury. When it comes to eternity, he ended up in hell. Lazarus was badly dressed, poorly dressed, but he ended up in heaven. Doesn't that tell you clothing is no indicator for eternal destiny? So even as we are emphasizing that the Christian's way of dressing matters, do not think that it is the one that will determine whether you go to heaven or not. It will be whether the clothing is telling the truth about the inner you, because that's what Christ is looking at, and that will be important. Deuteronomy 22:5, "A woman must not wear men's clothing, nor a man wear women's clothing, for the Lord your God detests anyone who does it." Another rule: wear so that people can see clearly you are a man. Wear so that people can see clearly you are a woman. It's ungodly for a Christian to try to wear something that will make people mistake them for a different gender. And you can see, therefore, the Word of God does not leave us without information about dressing. So what I'm saying is, among the spiritual disciplines you have, you pray, you fellowship, the way you dress is also dictated by the scriptures. And you have read enough verses for you to see it matters to God how you actually dress. So there must be a discipline, spiritual discipline of clothing, of dressing, and how you dress matters. Especially because your real interest is how to win others to the kingdom of God. And your dressing can interfere with how you communicate that message. So let the dress, although it doesn't preach, let it assist the preaching. You still have to share your testimony, but let the dress not contradict your testimony.